Hello, everyone. This is Kayiu, and welcome back to Return to the Realm, our first episode of 2023. Not for you
Woohoo!
guys, there will have been like 4 or 5 episodes that you've seen from us by this point. But this is the first one we're recording in 2023, so, counts for that. And new beginnings, we're starting off Ship of Destiny. I honestly do not remember anything about this book, so it's good. I remember like the last 25% and nothing else, so this is going to be an exciting reread. Um, and I guess before I accidentally say something about why it's important that I don't remember stuff, this is a rereaders podcast, so this is going to cover not only content from the original Farseer trilogy, the Live Trip Traders trilogy, but potentially all 16 books in the Realm of the Elderlings cycle. So, as always, if you haven't read those and don't want to be spoiled, now is the time to click off.
We'll see you later.
Bye. But yeah, like, even just in this, like, because this is like a shorter section compared to what we usually read because of prologue and I think chapter 4 are sort of like itty bitty sized.
Mhm.
But there's already so much that I forgot and I feel like adds texture to like stuff that I didn't think about before. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, no, I feel the same.
I think this one, like, it doesn't, it doesn't follow, like, the typical third book where everything happens, like, at the very, 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 very end. Like, I feel like shit's happening throughout the whole thing.
Definitely.
Like,
That's
the pacing's better than Assassin's Quest. I love Assassin's Quest, but
Yeah,
I
like
wonder
2
if
things of
it's
note
better.
happen before like the end.
yes.
I wonder if with each third book it gets progressively better, or if like this one's just the best one because there's so many different characters and so much stuff happened at the end of Madship.
I just remember, like, I remember Fool's Fate being like a nightmare because of there was like all the time that they were like, we're going to Oslovjal, we're going to Oslovjal, we're on Oslovjal, we're gonna go find Icefire, we're gonna go find Icefire, and it's like, come on.
Do they not even go to Oslovjal until the third book?
Oh yeah, no,
I feel like they're just
they
like
don't leave until
travel.
the third book. That's like the
What are they
whole-
even doing? Oh, I guess the whole first book is like the cat thing.
Yeah, the cat thing.
That's
Also,
just like
Night Eyes' last hurrah.
I like, I know it's not, I don't know. I resent Dutiful for that whole thing because that's what killed Night Eyes. And it's Dutiful's fault for being a little bitch.
I mean, okay. Night Eyes was on his way out. Like Fitz had basically extended his lifespan way beyond what he should have been.
Yeah, but he could have like died choking on a fishbone like next to the heart.
It's so much better.
At least he died in his sleep. I don't think I want that traumatic death for Night Eyes.
But he got like hurt. He got like stabbed with swords and stuff.
Did he?
Yeah.
He got like wounded?
Yes. And that's like why he dies.
Oh, okay. I straight up did not remember that. Oops.
I thought he was just like exhausted from having to keep up with all the horses and stuff.
I think it's that, but then he also gets like hurt.
Oh my god.
I know.
I don't remember this
and
at
it's
all.
Dutiful's fault.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of was like annoying in like most of that trilogy, I feel.
Yeah, he's really annoying in the first book.
I think I have a little more sympathy for him because it's sort of like, it feels like, what if Fitz had actually been raised as royalty and we didn't have him as a point of view kind of thing? Because I think him and Hap do a lot of the same stupid shit that Fitz does as a kid, and it's just like, because you're not in their head, you're like, you are the worst.
I can see
but
that.
No, but Dutiful does do a lot of dumb shit.
Hap basically is the same as Fitz, but like instead of falling in love with someone loyal like Molly, he falls in love with someone who doesn't really give a shit.
He also doesn't have any destiny. I think that's actually a part of the reading that I kind of have never thought about much, but like Hap is Fitz, except if Fitz didn't have all of this weight on him.
Yeah, if he was free
Yeah.
to do whatever he wanted.
Mm.
I don't think Fitz would have ended up as a minstrel, though.
I think he's got the voice for it, doesn't he, though?
Yeah, he could have ended up as a minstrel, but I think he would have done like he would have been a map maker. I've said
Yeah,
this
I
before.
think he would have been a whatever he wants to do with
Fedrin.
Yeah.
A scribe. I think he would have been a scribe.
A historian, a scribe, a map maker, a lot of those things, yeah.
Yeah, but he is kind of a narcissist, so it all always ends up being about himself. Everything he writes.
Yeah. I think that's just because of all of his trauma. I feel like maybe if he had a healthy upbringing, he wouldn't have anything to write about for himself. Or he would learn that journaling is like a side hobby of his and he can work through his issues that way instead of like putting it all in the history as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. He doesn't actually care about himself that much. He just sort of like wants to he doesn't have anywhere else to write about it.
Feels
But, like-
compulsed to tell his story.
Yeah. I definitely think that like
Fucking crazy story. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
that's
want to tell
true.
it too.
Mhm. And like we were talking about how Kenneth and Fitz are sort of paralleled. We can see that narcissism, like how a different side of that narcissism in Kenneth. I'm trying to bring it back to this book because
The book that we're actually talking about or
yeah,
supposed to
before
be
we started
talking about?
recording, I mentioned how I was like there was like a pause when I joined the call, and I was like I realized I was waiting for like because we usually have like long conversations about the series in general before getting into the thing, and I'm like, oh okay, I'll just start recording, and now we got
Now-
into it here
Now we're in that. Yeah.
live. Okay.
Well-
That all would have been like pre-show talk for sure.
Yeah. See, this is what you guys are missing out on. Just us rambling about
Fits as
Fits.
usual. I mean,
Mhm.
everything circles
one more
back.
book, and then we get back to him and Night Eyes.
I miss him so much. I wanted to read like Tawny Man right now, and I'm like, no, I can't. I'm just gonna wait.
It also helps that Tawny Man, I think, like okay, this book is definitely better paced, but it doesn't have like Tawny Man just like hits the ground running after the first few chapters.
hmm
Yeah, and you're like enchanted by the first few chapters, even though they're slow, because you miss the characters and you're like, oh, we're
Yes.
back.
Mhm. There's also a sense
it's
of like there
cozy.
is history of like there's a lot more questions whereas I feel like by the start of this book not all of them but a bunch of like the burning questions from the first two books have been answered. For example, what's the deal with the serpents and She Who Remembers? That's what
Mhm.
happens in Prologue, She Who Remembers, where we get a point of view from She Who Remembers and she tells us everything that she remembers.
Yep. I think speaking of the prologue, every time there's like a scene with the serpents, I'm trying to figure out who each serpent is in Rain Wilds. And like the bitchy white serpent, I think is definitely Spit.
Yeah, I could
in
see that.
Rain Wilds.
I feel like that is true.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense just because like I feel like they both have the same bitterness to them.
Yeah, the same
They're very
like
cynical.
awful energy.
Same. Yeah. I think it's a little more justified for Serpent Spit, though, because Dragon Spit, you're like a goddamn dragon and you've got everything.
Right.
You've got people waiting on you hand and foot. Serpent Spit, like, I get it. Like, this is one of my notes was like, it's really kind of a marvel how over the course of the past two books, these like 30-foot weird eccentric reptile people, we've come to like empathize and feel their existential dread at this point. So because I remember like the first like book and a half, it was like even rereading it, we were like, this is fucking weird. Like they're just like we're the Tangle and we were shooting poison at each other, and it's like why do we care?
Yep.
Speaking of the other dragons, though, I made a note of this later on in like the later chapters, but I want to talk about it now because we're already like somewhat talking about it, and we jump around anyway, so it's fine. But I think that Tantaglia's point of view is so refreshing compared to the Rainwild dragons because all they do is cry and complain. And Tantaglia like has this independence and seeing like it from a real dragon's point of view is so cool and interesting, and she like chooses to go back to the people, so you know that like deep down she cares about them, even though she like is trying to tell herself like, oh, I don't give a shit, like they're just a little fly and I'm this huge majestic thing, but like she does care a little bit, and she still goes to them, and she like is gentle with Rain and Selden. Like I just love her point of view. It's so refreshing compared to the crybabies of the Rain Wild Dragons.
I agree. And she can somewhat be reasoned with, whereas like Sintara is just awful, and like you
She's so annoying. I hate
can't
her.
reason with her at all because she's just like, nope, I'm right.
Yeah, I couldn't. Also, I forgot her name and had to look it up, and then I remembered Sinatra.
Sinatra.
Yeah. I was like, I could have
I'm
known
still
this.
not over the fact that I misread it for 4 books in a row.
It's
Damn.
funny that you thought that Robin Hobb would name a dragon Sinatra.
Yeah.
It feels like a Robin Hobb name. Okay, I'm skipping forward a little bit, but Robin Hobb literally has a character in this section called Sterb. I don't put anything past her.
But you guys, is that the fucking Kupris father? Because I thought he went crazy in the city.
They have
So
a
who is this?
stepfather. They have Rain says something
he
about
got
his
remarried?
stepfather. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm like,
Okay.
what? I was so confused.
Yeah, me too. I was like, is this just like an editing error that Hobb forgot that like she had this important piece of backstory for Rain?
I think it's like in the last book, he says something about like my stepfather and my brother, blah, 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 blah.
Got you.
So
We
Johnny-
never see Sterb again, I think. I feel like
He's
Sterb.
never on screen. He was only mentioned, I think.
Their
I would
family's
remember if we
obviously,
got more Sterb content.
yeah, their family's obviously operates via matriarchy, so
For sure.
Sterb is not important.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him like doing his little hobbies, and then Johnny just like running the whole show and coming to tell him, and he's like, "Oh, that's nice, dear. Like, I'm just gonna sit here in the corner doing my stuff, being really quiet and not dramatic at all." Like,
Wait, but that's what
unproblematic.
wasn't the context what they mentioned him in is like Sterb, like he was like going in front of the council or some shit. She was like, yeah, Sterb does.
Yeah,
I'm like,
but like I've never seen him do that ever. I didn't even know Sterb was a character. I'm like, who the fuck is Sterb? Like, what?
where did this come from? Oh yeah, Sinatra names.
Yes.
And then we were talking about dragons, right? Okay. I think that she who remembers his perspective relative to the other serpents and dragons is really interesting because she has a lot more of a clinical analytical bent that I think lots of the other serpents don't have. Like the serpents sort of see themselves as having like even the ones with the I forget Malkin's tangle, they have like this sort of like almost religious view of their thing. Whereas she remembers like, yeah, it's this biological imperative. I gotta go get them. And she has like a very like almost straightforward view of her own life and stuff that's going on. Whereas I feel like the serpents and dragons are such like dramatic bitches.
I feel like also she like takes more time to look at everything and like think critically and like explore, and I think that's probably partially because this is her first time out in the world in this like life cycle, and also partially because she's she who remembers, and all the other serpents are fighting so hard to like hold on to their memories that they don't have time to like do anything else aside from remembering their stuff and like helping other people remember. And she's over here like, I wonder what this ship is. Like, it smells weird. I'm just gonna explore it for a little bit and like hang out with it for a minute and like keep going on my direction.
She also has like a level of empathy that the other ones don't have. Like the fact that she pushes like the boat that Wintrow's in towards the ship and like helps them. I don't think any of the other serpents would do that. Like I don't even think Malkin would do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just because none of them had been in the position that she was in. And there was no way that she could have freed herself. So I wonder if like Malkin had been in a situation like that, if he would have acted differently.
It does mirror a little bit Tantaglia's rescue. Like Wintrow rescues She Who Remembers at detriment to himself, so then she saves him, and Malta rescues Tantaglia at detriment to herself, and then Tantaglia feels an obligation to save Malta.
Yeah.
And Rain. So it shows like the whatever is in their like society or their brains is very much like a give and take.
Even to people like beings that they view as less than. It's kind of nice. It's also like, of course, it's all the Vestrite kids who are changing the world in both ways. Like, freaking of course. All three of them had a hand in bringing, like, a physical hand in bringing the dragons back.
Yep.
Yeah, my last note for the... Actually, I guess I have 2 more notes, but I guess one thing I have is like a question, which is, how much do you think the abominations actually can like tell the future? Because like,
I don't think they can at all.
Yeah.
because she says they aren't true seers, but she says that they can also like they have a sense of the future, which like I don't know about you, but that sounds like searing to me. Like if someone was like, yeah, I get like senses of the future, I'd be like, okay, yeah, keep talking. Lottery numbers for next month.
I think she meant like by looking at everything that happened from the past, they can get a sense of what the future will be like.
Yeah, that's what I got too.
Because like dragons are so much more aware of like the cyclical nature of time. That makes sense.
Well, and because there are so many generations that I think She Who remembers. So them drinking her like water and like toxins, they can get like pretty much probably the whole history of like humanity. And those are the only people who are coming. And because history repeats itself, it's probably not difficult to like find a point in history that is similar to what was going on in the present day and just kind of see what happened then and infer that it's going to happen again.
Right.
But they do like specific personal histories too, I guess. Like they're like for like Kenneth's thing. I forget what they say to Kenneth, but they do like they got some like smaller than macro level stuff. Though I guess like there is like sort of a theme of reincarnation and stuff.
When
like,
I was rereading
your wish is gonna come true, or
yeah, when I was rereading it, it reminded me of the horoscopes that are in like the newspapers.
I was gonna say it's like a fortune cookie.
Yeah, anyone could read that and apply that to themselves and be like, "Oh my gosh, they know I have a wish."
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? That's pretty fair. Especially because Kenneth's whole thing is like, oh, my destiny! This must be talking about my destiny! And I guess people who come to Others Island are probably already have like an inflated sense of self-importance to some degree.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I think what's much more interesting are the little trinkets and how those apply to everything. I think those are more magical than the others.
I'm still mystified by like I want an explanation. Like, is it just that there's so much magic from that being a dragon, like, egg hatching place that it, like, attaches trinkets to people? Because Dutiful picks up that one that looks just like his wife.
Oh, yeah.
And then Etta picks up the baby. Wintrow picks up a whole ass serpent. Like... It's really bizarre how you find like I think it counts.
I think it does.
It's like you find what is like your destiny to find on others' island, and he finds the serpent.
Does Kenneth find anything?
He did, and then he found like a bunch of stuff and made Surkor like, or the other guy. It wasn't Surkor; it was some other guy. He made him like carry it with him, and then
And then
he
they
like snuck the ruby back and gave it to Edda.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was though that he found.
We talked about this last book, but I feel like maybe the island already had a lot of like strong magic. Like maybe there's like an undercurrent of like the actual silver skill river underneath the island, and it's like this huge like well of it or something, and that's what makes it powerful, and that's what drew the dragons there, and then it just became associated with them, and that's why people think that it's magic, but it already was magic, and then they just kind of added on top of it.
Yeah.
I also wonder if there's like a semi-natural explanation for it, like in the sense of like, yeah, there are tides, and the tides just bring stuff here. But then it doesn't explain like the weird magical nature of the stuff. Like I still don't get like the dutiful figurine thing. That's still like the biggest, because like that's, who made that? Where did it come from?
It's so specific.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's
like,
what that's the part of it that is like mystifying to me. Like I get that it's probably at the perfect location for like the tides to be washing stuff up, but it's like how does like a baby figurine get in Edda's boot when her like destiny is to have a baby? Or yeah, like the thing with dutiful. It's very, that's the mystical part.
Well, and
it's one of the like very few things that are like truly mysteries by the end of the series.
Mm-hmm.
That
we
and
know
like
that
the
like
true nature of
magic
the
is a
skill
thing
river.
there, though. Aside from like the scientific magic of the dragons and like silver, like there is like
Yeah.
isn't what's her face like a hedge witch or something? Like she makes charms and stuff that work.
Gina.
Yeah.
Gina or whatever, the racist lady.
Yeah. But so we know that there are some kinds of magic, and like Fitz writes about it in the like little italics section before some of the chapters. So I feel like this might just be an actual like this is magic. That's the explanation.
Yeah.
Which like I think that usually that would feel like a cop out, but in a series where like magic is so well documented and explained in other ways, it feels nice to have some things that are genuine, like mysteries. It like
Mhm.
it breaks up that feeling of like, okay, everything's documented and understood to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, my last note for the prologue was just, I love the kinds of lines that can happen because of how like the serpents think about their poison slash in the way it's like, memory. Like one line here was like, her gasping gills poisoned her with history. And it's just sort of, it's a type of thing which is really indicative of like the serpent specific experience slash perspective, and kind of sells it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the same thing is how they determine time, because I noticed that She Who Remembers was tracking how long she'd been with Vivacia based on the tides, because it said she'd followed it now for 12 tides. And I think that's so interesting too, because they have a different way of viewing it than the ships do and the dragons do, and they all are like kind of the same, but they're different, so they like view it differently. It's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so alien that like you can't understand what they mean, but it's just alien enough for it to be like, wait, catch me up on that? Excuse me?
Yeah. Also, did you guys remember or know that serpents apparently have two hearts?
No.
Yes, because we discussed it. We discussed it last book. I remember.
We did?
For real?
Yeah,
I
or maybe
forgot
I put down
already.
a note, but I just remember
Too.
like there was some really extra part where like she went out of her way to be like the serpent's hearts, and I'm like, Hobb really wants us to know that the serpents have multiple hearts.
Mm.
I thought it was like brand new information to me because I was like, what? They have two? Do not remember a single thing about it before. And I'm sure I'm gonna forget this and then something will happen and I'll be like, whoa, you guys.
Yeah, it's like when Jared asked, like, what was Kefria's spy mission again? I was like, it was the end of the last book, but beats me. I have no recollection.
Does she actually end up going on a spy mission ever?
No.
They like plan it. I don't think she ends up going because of the earthquake.
Yeah.
Right.
But she like brings it up at the council and then immediately after there's like the earthquake, I think.
Yeah.
Or she was gonna leave the next day and tell her kids like
Divine intervention stops Kefria from having a character arc.
I know,
She
fucking
went to
sucks.
Malta's room to tell her, and Malta was gone, I think. And that's how they were like, where's Malta? And then the earthquake or cave in or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of topics, so we can move on to chapter 1, the Rain Wilds. Not this series, but we're there now, so yeah. So this chapter is basically we start off with Malta, the satrap, and Kiki trying to get their way to tree competency. They end up overshooting and missing it entirely thanks to the currents. And then Rain and Selden are still trapped. Kefria, meanwhile, we have the dramatic irony of knowing what's going on with them. Kefria has no clue and is like, oh my god, my kids are probably dead, but I can't let myself think of that now. And she and Johnny share a little bit of a heart-to-heart.
Kefria made me really mad in this section because she thinks her kids might be dead, but her sole focus is still on herself. She isn't thinking about, like, oh my god, like, what kind, like, were they miserable and then they died? Like, are they alone somewhere and scared? No, nothing like that. It's like, what is my identity if I don't have children? Like, Kefria, you are such a dumb, selfish bitch.
She's daydreaming about going to the clubs and shit now that she's single and like no longer a parent.
Okay. I'd have to reread it, but I felt like she was like, it was more of like a, I can't let myself think of this now. And then when she's talking with Johnny, it's sort of like, this is the first time in my life where this has been like a thing. I don't know. I'm always like on team feel sympathetic for characters that maybe don't deserve it. So I can.
Yeah, I just couldn't. There was like one part where it was literally like, if all her children were dead, what did that make her? It wasn't like, it was literally just
like Wintrow's definitely still alive. I guess he doesn't know that.
Exactly.
But like,
Okay, they don't know that. They think that the ship's been captured by evil Kenneth, the Pirate King, and that they don't know his fate.
Yeah, but it's still like, oh, it just made me annoyed with her. But I just hate Kefria anyways, so
I couldn't stand her wailing at the end. I'm like, thank you, Tantaglia, for telling her to shut up because God, shut up.
Speaking of like characters that we can sympathize with, when I was taking a shower this morning, I was thinking about Malta and like just pondering why it's so much, she's more digestible on a reread. And I think, at least for me, it's because now that I've read the whole series, I know like what Malta's true personality is and like what she ends up to be like. So then on a reread, I can see more of how the way she's acting is just a reaction to her surroundings. Whereas when you're reading it at first, you think that that's just like the way she is in her personality. You're like, this child is awful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, yeah, you when you're rereading it, you can see like the threads that end up like growing and becoming Malta.
Yeah,
but then you don't like notice those on a first read because it's overwhelmed by like, I'm an asshole.
Yes. Yep.
Speaking of relating to Malta,
Ooh.
this one is way smaller and kind of dumb, but like, um, I was like, we were like shoveling and slash collecting mulch for a garden that me and my dad are gonna make yesterday, and like after an hour of that shit, I was like sore as hell. And reading the start of the chapter where Malta was like, I was just paddling through the night and her body was aching. I was like, oh my god, I cannot even imagine doing that.
Ugh.
Oh, I
No,
bet.
me neither.
Especially when there's no help from. She has to carry the satrap and Kiki's weight too.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's just straight up dead weight.
And then when she tries to get the satrap to help, he just lets the oar go in the water.
Like,
Like,
the
Come
water's
on,
fine.
dude.
I don't know how she didn't kill him. Like, can you even imagine how infuriating that would be?
I would have swung the oar right around and knocked him in and been
Yeah.
like, the water trapped him.
Yep.
Whoops.
Whoopsie.
Like,
Speaking of
and no
another-
one knows. Like, you could just do that. No one knows where he is.
I know, but I feel like Malta's too much of a good person to like do that.
Again, we've talked about like Dark Malta arc. I think it would be fun to have Malta do morally great things as a treat.
Yes,
Yes.
just for fun a little bit. Just for fun. How do you guys see Malta's like scar slash like crowning? Did you see it going across her forehead like this or going up like this?
I don't remember how I originally pictured it, but like either while I was reading this series or while I was reading Rain Wilds, I like looked up Malta. I think it was while I was reading Rain Wilds because all of a sudden her hair was blonde in Rain Wilds, and I was like, "Didn't you have black hair?" And I Googled her, and it had there was like a fan art of her, and it had it going like this because it turns into like a ridge or something.
Yeah, so I saw that too before, and that's how I always pictured it. But now I kind of want to picture it like it's an actual crown, like sitting on her head.
Oh.
But I don't
always
know
forget she
how it's
has a
actually
scar.
supposed to be.
I just completely. I always forget that characters have scars.
Yeah, it's like on her forehead because it's remember the satrap is like, "Oh, you're such a hideous freak."
Yeah.
Now that you have that gash on your head, and then she starts getting self-conscious of it.
Yeah, that's the first time I remember it. I'm like, okay. I think it's also because like we get Malta and Rain's perspective together, and they don't see each other like as
Yeah.
that at all. Which again, like, is really funny because both Malta and Rain in this section have moments where they're like, "What if they think I'm hideous?"
Ugly.
Meanwhile, you motherfuckers are about to die, and all you can think of is, "What if they think I'm ugly and don't love me?"
That's true love right there. Worrying about your appearance instead of your life.
I was gonna say some real teenager shit, but it's true love works too.
Yeah, that works too. I kind of want to go back to Madship and see when she gets the injury and like how it's described on her face, because that's how I'll start picturing the
Do they
crown.
even describe it? Because I thought it was just like super dark. Because all I can remember is Kefria stepping on Malta.
I know, that was funny. But I think later on, like, I think Kefria has to talk about it, or like Malta feels up on it. So like maybe.
Yeah, Malta feels it, and she feels like a ridge. I think it's just described as a ridge, though. I don't think it says whether it's like vertical or horizontal.
I wish it was described that way.
I think it maybe like comes from, she mentions it coming like from her hairline, or it's near her hairline. I'm not sure.
Also, rewinding a little bit back, talking about like Malta's hair color and stuff. I always get like characters' hair colors mixed up. Like, and I think it's always like I thought that Molly has to have black hair. Same thing for Vivacia. I don't know why. Malta's the only one who I think I actually remember the right hair color for, which is why while you were saying that, I was like, yeah, okay. I'm wondering if like they showed them on covers or something with the wrong hair color at some point, but I don't know.
That could be. Yeah, I remember because all
Dragon
the
too, which doesn't make any sense because she's a Vestrite, so she should have black hair.
all the Vestrit people have black hair, and then when Malta has blonde hair, it's because Tantaglia like changed her.
Why did she do that? Black hair is much cuter than blonde. Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
I like Malta. I like it.
No bias. I didn't even remember that her hair color changed.
I had no idea.
I did because it bothered me until I realized what the explanation was.
Mm-hmm.
I
See,
feel like
I think it would have bothered me, and that's why I simply discarded it and just kept my mental image of her.
I feel like all of us have different things that we remember, and they're all these like ridiculous, minute details, but we remember them so strongly, and we're like, "You guys, like this happened, don't you remember?" And the rest of us are like, I know that character."
Yeah, if we gathered more people for a reader's I bet you there'd be someone who'd be like, "Yes, Sterb! You don't remember Sterb?"
Yeah. I wrote a whole essay on him. I think my final note for this chapter. Oh no, it's for this section. But it's the satrap talking, and he's like talking about the Rainwilders, and he's like, they have no legal claims to the treasures they've been digging up and selling. And I'm like, well, yes, he's right, but he doesn't have any claim over it either. Like all of that should still belong to the Elderlings, or at least like Tantaglia, and they're just kind of taking it off and selling it piece by piece.
To be fair, I think they have as much legal claim to the Elderling stuff as anyone does to like archaeological stuff. Like ideally it would be like in a museum or something. The one thing that's really that they don't have any claim over is the dragons.
Yeah, the cocoons for sure.
Mm-hmm. And since that's their biggest treasure, I definitely think that like that line is intended to be like read like that way.
I'm just so surprised that Tantaglia is not going and like burning the whole Rainwilds down to the ground. Like I feel like I would be pissed.
Yeah,
And I would just take it out on all of them because it was their fault.
Tantaglia is honestly like way more reasonable than I remember. Like,
Yeah.
she's definitely kind of a prissy asshole, but like she's really tolerant considering the circumstances.
And I
Like
feel like because we've read Rainwild and know how unreasonable all of them are, it makes Tantaglia look like this angelic dragon being. Like she is perfect in the dragon's eyes.
I'm also remembering the scene where like Icefire and Tantaglia fight off all the Chalcedians in Rainwild, and I'm like, yeah, considering how much they can do, she really showed some goddamn restraint. She could have just gone into Rainwilds and just razed the city to the ground in like under an hour.
She does that at the end of this book too. Like to save Bingtown Harbor or Bay or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because on my first read of this, because I read Tawny Man first, and throughout Tawny Man, Tantaglia is just like tormenting Nettle. And then I like reread and I read this part, so I just thought Tantaglia was like awful. And then now that I'm reading it with the perspective of like actually getting to know the Rainwild dragons, I'm like, oh, she ain't that bad.
No, she's actually like kind of normal.
Right.
Yeah, it's like reading Tawny Man, she seems like this really like insidious character because you don't know much about her, but like having this context, just like she's being an annoying asshole because she doesn't know anything. You're her one point of contact. She's trying to get you to engage with her.
Yeah.
She's like, tell me what I need to know.
In Tawny Man, she's like a scary dream monster. Because if you read that without reading this, you don't know like what she is. Because you don't know that there are real dragons.
Thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really am glad that I read Tawny Man without reading this series first. I think that like it makes like it makes the Tantaglia stuff way more like impactful. I think like it adds a big sense of mystery to like what's going on with the dragons slash why are like the Bingtowners here? What's up with them? And like it makes the whole Amber section a lot more interesting. Like I don't know. I think that like if I'd read Live Ships first, there would have been a lot of like I wouldn't have been able to really relate to Fitz in lots of the sections which I think were fun to like be in Fitz's head and only have his information for.
Yeah. I think it'll be nice reading it through this time, having all the information and being more in line with like the Fool, with knowing everything and like having the Fool's horse named Malta and like realizing why that's important and why it's like special.
I cannot wait for them to catch that. I hope like for like the new readers.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Did I have any other notes for the section? Oh yeah, okay. I had like one more, which is like the conversation between Kefria and Johnny, and we talked about this earlier, where it's like she's considering her identity devoid of her family. Okay, I think that like Kefria like timing to think about it, but I think that I really like Johnny's line here, where it's like if the divine is also female and the female also divine, talking about Sa, then she understands that the woman is more than the mother, more than the daughter, more than wife. These are the facets of a full life, but no single facet defines a jewel. Um, which I think that is a really cool perspective, especially given like how we've seen like how patriarchal Bingtown has become, and so it
Mhm.
makes sense that Kefria would feel like defined by these roles.
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation, but it's not the time or place for Kefria to be worrying about that.
Mhm.
In my humble opinion.
I think that like there's a interesting parallel in the next chapter where Veronica's like, yeah, I don't have my Ephron's dead, all my children are elsewhere. Time to it's like what you're saying, time to like make my life interesting if it's going to be like this. Mhm.
Yeah. I love Veronica so much now, and I think that Kefria is the true villain.
Yep.
I love how like I love Veronica and so I want to like take that and then like compile all the times that you've been like
Right,
fuck Veronica, I
her.
hate her, she's the worst. Well, wasn't there a section where you're like,
There's
I hate
one-
I hate Veronica more than Kyle and Kenneth in this section?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
for
one
sure.
direct quote. I'm gonna find it because I put it on
On Insta?
I put it on Insta when when we did like our anniversary post.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking about like oh yeah. I was like, who is Satan in the analogy if like Fitz is Jesus, the Fool is God, and the skill current is the Holy Spirit? And you said, I mean, overall it's definitely Claris, but I'll put my vote in for Ronica when I'm mad at her.
When I am mad at her, she's the freaking worst. Now she's getting better though.
Ronica for Satan of the whole series.
There must have been something that she was doing in that section where I just hated her guts. You know, I still hold a grudge over her taking Vivacia. I will hold a grudge for Althea for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Ronica
it's
is
pretty bad.
becoming a better person, but I still.
But also
can't forgive her for that.
someone she needs custody taken away from her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't forgive her for that. Although I do like her in this, and I do like her like slamming her hands on the desk and scaring Cirilla. It's kind of fun. Like
I agree.
she does get a little savage, and I kind of like it.
Speaking of which, do we have any other notes for the first chapter? Because I feel like we're moving into Ronica territory.
I don't have any other notes for the first chapter.
I have one, and it's just like Bender is talking to all the other Rainwilders when they're talking about like they just saw a dragon, and he's like, we have to be careful because like we don't know, like she could be our enemy. We don't know anything about her. She might bear us all ill will. And like, of course he's saying that because he knows that she's going to be pissed because they kept her trapped there and were about to kill her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
We
And he's, like,
don't know if the
doing damage
dragon is
control.
hostile. We don't know if it holds a grudge against us for imprisoning and killing its kind. There's no way for us to have that information, but just in case.
Hmm.
And the thing is, like, I don't think any of the other Rainwilders know where they get the Wizardwood logs from. So it's just the Cooper's family, and Tantaglia wouldn't know that either. So she would just take her wrath out on everyone if she was the kind of, like, dragon to do that.
Is it exclusively the Cooperses, or like because
I think
okay,
so because they own the Rooster Chamber,
I
and
guess
And
that's
that's
I just
where
always
where
got the impression that like more people worked on it, just because like I feel like making a whole ass ship is like an endeavor. But I guess
well,
yeah,
they
well,
probably did, but I think that maybe the Cooperses, like, cut the log open first and, like,
right.
got
Okay, so
the
they
evidence,
just bring the
and then
material
were
to
like
shipbuilders. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, makes
mhm.
sense.
but
No, I
of
think they
course they're trying to
gatekeep the
damage
whole
control.
thing because it's like a shameful secret that they're actually like killing.
Gaslight gatekeep girl boss. That's
Yeah,
funny.
They're
yeah.
killing dragons every time they do that, and they don't want anyone to know.
Okay, chapter 2, Traitors and Traitors. Um, essentially we get a this is our contextualizing what's happening in Bingtown for this book chapter, where we get Cyrilla and Ronica point of views. Ronica happens upon Serwyn, who snuck into the house worried about Malta, and through him and through a heavy amount of Ronica exposition, we get an idea of like what's going down in Bingtown. It's not good. The city is in shambles. Um, it all like it's basically civil war and also war against Chalcedians. Um, Cyrilla is one of the factions in the civil war. She's trying to wrest control from the other traders and sort of reshape Bingtown as sees fit and as she's always imagined it to be. She's always sort of put Bingtown on a pedestal, and now that she's here, she finds out it's not as much to her liking as she thought it would be. So she's trying to finally make it a safe haven for herself, but to the detriment of what Bingtown actually needs. And Ronica confronts her on that.
It's funny because this is like the first time in the entire series that Ronica is correct, and Cyrilla just thinks that she's deranged.
Mm-hmm.
Cyrilla's like, if you don't do things by the book, you're a chaotic heathen.
Right. Well, it's also funny that like this little old woman activates Cyrilla's fight or flight so hard.
Yeah.
Why are you so scared of Ronica?
Well, honestly, if like she has to have been tough and scary like that because I don't think Ephraim would ever have married just like a meek woman. So
Yeah.
like I feel like Ronica can be actually scary when she wants, and I'm sure she like put her kids in their places when they were younger. So I can see like Ronica being a scary lady, even if she is this like little bitty old thing. Like I can see her still being scary.
Yeah.
I also got like undercurrents of almost like maybe sort of jealousy because I think that Cyrilla is sort of like Veronica's kind of what Cyrilla wants to be, right? She's like
Yeah.
Mhm.
she's integrated into Bingtown, she's semi-respected, and she has the confidence to like wield her strength to enact change.
And she knows firsthand about Bingtown. Like there's only so much that you can learn from historical documents, and you don't get the culture or like any of the little nuances of living there unless you actually live there. Like you can't get that from a book. And I think that Cyrilla like realizes that there's a big piece of Bingtown that she's missing, and it's obvious when Ronica shows up.
I wonder if Cyrilla was always a point of view character or if like she sort of like snuck in there in later drafts because I really feel like reading scenes like this, it makes me appreciate her inclusion as a point of view character because I think that lots of these scenes we could have just seen through the eyes of others like Ronica or whatever. But I think
Mhm.
getting them in Cyrilla's perspective is so much more effective in like contextualizing why she does what she does and not making because they're just sort of like cardboard cutout villains in this series, like the Satrap and whatever, but and whose motivations are really surface level and easy to understand. But I think like having Cyrilla as a point of view character makes her like the stuff that she's doing, which is like I think pretty objectively bad for Bingtown for our protagonist. It makes it like more grounded and like understandable, even though you still hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being like, on my first read, I was excited for Cyrilla to get there because I thought, like, if her and Ronica teamed up, they could be such a good team because they're both so smart. So
Yeah.
then I was disappointed when it went the other way. And I was like frustrated with Cyrilla because it's like, she's not a bad guy. You're just like aligning yourself. I don't know. The way Cyrilla approaches it is really weird to me because the whole time she's like, I want to get out of Jamelia. I want to live in Bingtown. And then when she has the opportunity, she's still aligning herself with Jamelia and like trying to get Bingtown to still be a province of that. And it's like, wouldn't you want to help them get their independence so that you could live there free of like the satrap?
I
Kind of,
think
but
that,
she the only agency she has is the Satrap is
yeah.
like the power she has indirectly through the Satrap. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the issue for her.
Yeah, but if she lined herself up with the old traders, they wouldn't care what her authority is via the satrap anyways. If
I
she
don't
could
think
give
she
them like
trusts that.
I don't
yeah.
think she knows better. And like the way that she reacts to Ronica too, and she's like thinking back, she's like, how did the satrap like handle this stuff when people came to him with this? And she like just spurts off some random ass shit that he says. And she like it's just kind of ridiculous because she was so critical of him before and realizes all of the things that he had done wrong in his
Mhm.
like rulings and in his life in general. And then she's trying to
To
like mimic
emulate.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I think it's all just in response to her trauma. Like she just is still in that my life is very much in danger all of the time. So she can't think, she can't
Clearly.
relax and she can't sit down and think logically about anything because she's still so like, I'm in danger, I'm in danger.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think
But
like
it
in
all
addition to
is
that,
really annoying. It does irritate me to no end how she acts, even though I can see why she's acting that way.
Right.
I think in addition to that, there's sort of like like looping back around to like, okay, she wanted to escape Jamila and settle down in Bingtown. Now that she's in Bingtown, why doesn't she just do that? I think it's because the Bingtown she's in is not the Bingtown she's always dreamed of. Like, she's built up this super idealized version of Bingtown. She's like, oh, the traders are actually stupid. What am I gonna do about it? And her solution is not to like try and engage with them. She's just sort of like she's stuck in this super like cosmopolitan and like sticking her nose up view of like she has like this I know best kind of view on Bingtown, and that's
Mhm.
not like helping her to actually engage with it as it is now.
Yeah. And allying herself with Road Cairn or whatever, the worst decision she could possibly make. If this man frightens you and you know that and you've said that to us multiple times, why would you choose him to be like the guy that you go to and that you conspire with?
Yeah, that's really confusing to me.
And he's not even a traitor. He's a traitor's son right now. So, like, he doesn't hold any authority. She likes him because she has sway over him, just the same as she had over the
Mhm.
Satra. But, like, it's not going to work out for you. He's a scary guy and he will, like, do horrible things to you. You need to be careful if you say something that he doesn't like, he's just going to off you like he's going to do everyone else.
Mhm.
I just
Yeah,
think
I think
their
like
choices
the
are
dynamic with Road Kern is like super complicated, and it sort of like gets even messier as the stuff in Bingtown goes on.
yeah.
I think we can all agree that he's an asshole, though.
For sure.
Yes.
Doesn't he die? He like tries to beat up Cirilla and then he dies, doesn't he?
Hopefully.
Because I remember like an incident occurring in like the study or something like that where like he like does kind of try to like beat up on her, or like he's aligned with the Chalcidians. There's like something weird that happens
Yeah.
when I think Tantaglia comes back and like crazy stuff is happening. And I think he does die because I'm ready for it already.
Dies as in like Tantaglia slurps him up? Like what's the
No, I think that like him and Cirilla are like in Devad's house or like wherever she's staying at the time, and he's like trying to force her to do something that she doesn't want to do or that she's like realizing isn't right. And then I think somebody kills him. I thought it was like her maybe. Because he like
okay, I remember that lead up. I don't remember it ending with him dying, but I could be wrong.
Maybe I just wish that it did. And like that's how it is in my head, like it actually happened. But I feel like it did. Like I think that like they had the incident and then someone else came in and killed him. But I don't know who it is or why.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see.
It has to be in this book, so we won't have to wait long.
No.
Oh yeah, one of my notes for this chapter. I like how at the very start, the recap of how the battle against the Chalcedians went down. There's like they make like special note of how important the Three Ships people were to actually like winning it.
Yeah.
Because like the Three Ships people are sort of like there's a big conflict between the new traders and the old traders, and the Three Ships people are just sort of like there. They're not like a big faction like the slaves or whatever, but we get a lot of perspective on how like they're sort of not treated as second class citizens because that's literally what the slaves are, but they're sort of like looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a different class. So seeing them actually roll in like helping to save Bingtown, and I think by the end they become part of the charter and are respected as citizens is I think cool.
I think it's because the old traders don't view them as competition, and that's why the Three Ships people were like allowed to stay in Bingtown. And because the new traders are changing everything up and they're like a serious competition to all of the Bingtown traders like livelihoods, they view them differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like seeing the Three Ships people come in and have a bigger, stronger like role in the book. And it is nice at the end where they're like all coming together and the traders are like, yeah, like we're sorry about this, like let's be friends. Something I noticed at the beginning of this chapter is just a little quote. I think Ronica thinks it, and she's like, what the Chalcedians had not carried off, her neighbors had. And I'm like, that is so sad to think that not only is your house getting plundered by strangers, but people you know and have lived next to and interacted with on a regular basis are also coming in and taking your stuff. Like, that's so messed up.
It's sad. But also, they all think they're dead.
And traitors.
And like,
Yeah.
and traitors, yeah. And I don't know, like if we were under like a war and I thought my neighbors were dead and like there could be food in their house that I needed, I don't know for sure that I wouldn't go in there. I probably would.
I think I would just.
I'd be like, they don't need it no more. I do.
Right. Right. Like I probably wouldn't plunder like their TV, but like if I thought there was something I could sell and I needed money or there was food, I would do it.
The Real Housewives of Bingtown.
Oh God. I think I would just go in for the food. I feel so bad that either the stuff got stolen or they like actively broke it all. Like why would you like that's just so
Yeah, I
weird.
wouldn't go in there and like break shit. That's weird.
I just think it's so messed up. And if you do think they're dead, why would you scratch like traitor in in study. So, like, that's confusing. Unless it
I
happened
think
the
probably
night. It might have happened also like the night that Davad died and stuff. Because I think Ronica and Rach fled for like a minute the
Yeah, they
second that
went.
Kefria and them left. So maybe it was like in the beginning during the craziness when they didn't have the rumor that like everyone was dead.
Right.
Still very sad though.
I do align myself with Veronica in this chapter. I kind of feel she says that Davad isn't a traitor, and I think that like in the technical way that she means, she's right. But I think that like she's like when like his greed and foolishness had made him, I think, a traitor to Bingtown in most respects.
Yeah,
Like he has like a
Yes.
it's making me
he
cringe a
wasn't
little bit.
actually a traitor to the Satrap. Like, but like, come on now, dog.
Yeah.
I don't know why even in death she's defending him so hard and like feels the need to do that. Like, I don't know.
Like, why are you being ride or die for
And
him?
it's they even acknowledge it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's weird.
weird. I don't care for it. Speaking of things I don't care for, the Trell father is literally the worst person ever. He is 100% Kyle level bad on as a father because
Yep.
he's like pissed and like hates any mention of Malta. And when Delo's crying about her friend being dead, he locks her in her room and threatens to beat her if she says Malta's name. Like, what the heck? That is your baby girl, first of all. Why? Like, ugh, he fucking sucks.
It's really
And
weird.
I
Also,
think
the
Brad's
fact that
ever
bullet.
they're like,
ready to be a fight ways.
yeah. Well, and the fact that they like just pretend that Brashen like doesn't exist. It's like never mention him again. It's really weird. Like, can you imagine growing up in that environment? It's no wonder Delo just like clings to gossiping or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that his wife is like beaten into submission too.
Oh,
Like
I'm
she's
sure.
probably terrified and won't do anything or say anything, and she'll like comfort the kids after everything happens, but
Right.
won't stop anything from happening in the first place. So he is the new villain also. I think that's all I've got for this chapter.
Yeah.
Me too.
By her as a person. But yeah. So I think if that's all we have for this section, we can move on to chapter 3, Wintrow. Which like is really funny because for most of this chapter, Wintrow is not even there. He's still almost dying after being after I guess what would he having caustic skin contact with She Who Remembers. So he's all bloated up. Um, Kenneth and Vivacia have a disagreement where Vivacia finally acknowledges that like she doesn't know Kenneth and she can't trust him because he's not willing to open himself up to her. Um, and uh, we get a Etta point of view where she's thinking about how much she would miss Wintrow if he died, and that was very sweet, and I love that. And then Wintrow is brought up onto the decks. We get our first view of Bolt, and lots of shit goes down.
This like wasn't one of my notes when I was reading it, but I just thought of it. It's like really disgusting how frequently it's mentioned that like if anything touched Wintrow's skin, it would just like peel off.
I know.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Bro is paper mache.
yeah, it's really
Yeah.
gross and painful. I understand why he's just like living in the recesses of his own brain.
Well, I feel like the wildest thing to me is the reason that he's hiding is to save Vivacia. Like, he's not even hiding because it hurts. Like, he is selfless enough that he would rather just be like a little vegetable for the rest of his life and have Vivacia stay blissfully ignorant than,
Have her
like,
find out she's a dead dragon.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and Bolt's mean, so he's like, oh, I don't want
That's
her to
scary.
take over.
Yeah.
To be fair, like we also see like Wintrow is also like Bolt basically forces him to like answer some hard questions where it's like, well, yeah, you're saying you don't want to know this? Well, too bad. Neither did I. You don't want to die? Cool. I didn't want to die either, motherfucker. So,
Yeah.
tit for tat.
She does have good points.
Hmm. It's unfortunate that she's like, at this point, she's entirely justified, and then she comes out and she's like, cool, I'm free. Time to be the world's biggest dick.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Speaking of Wintrow and Bolt, Bolt, like, I mean, we don't have the verbiage for this when these characters don't, but essentially Bolt is like coaxing Wintrow on doing a skill healing, but on his own body. And I know that like Fitz's body will accidentally do that to itself later on because in Tawny Man, when he gets stabbed with that like rusty sword and gets infected, like Shade and Thick
Shade, beautiful
and
dick, yeah.
the Fool and Dutiful, yeah, like do a botched skill healing on him basically.
They heal
But
him too well.
they heal him too well, yeah, so then it just like keeps doing it over and over and over. But like, is Wintrow the first character in this series to do a proper skill healing on themselves?
Yes.
And or the only character in this series to do that?
Is he
He's
the first
definitely
character
the
to
very
get a
first.
skill healing period? Like, do we have skill healing in the first trilogy?
No.
No. They don't
Yeah,
know
so I
it
think
exists.
yeah, he's like the first person to do skill healing period.
It's
Yeah, isn't that so
interesting
wild?
that he is in this trilogy when it's the other characters in the Six Duchies that like actually utilize the skill more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Well,
so
thank
interesting that
you,
like even
Law.
at this point she has like the verbiage and like mindsets of skill healing sort of thought out already because it's
Mhm.
such a dead ringer once you've read like the coterie
Yeah.
skill healing and like Fitz putting the fool's body back together at the end of Fool's Fate.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing
Mhm.
about like thinking of your body as a system and like funneling it to heal and like pain as a function of that, etc., etc.
Right. It's dead on enough that on a reread, even without them highlighting the same verbiage for us as readers, we can pinpoint like, oh, that's a skill healing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool because it's not a real thing that any of us like no one can do that in the real world. But she
Yeah.
describes it well enough that we can identify it
Speak
without.
for yourself. I have received 3 skill healings in my lifetime, and I hope to receive several more.
Wow. Could you pass that down to me? Could have used that a couple of years ago when I broke my leg.
Bloodline
Oh.
only.
You'll have to teach us while we're building our live ship.
Yes.
Mm,
I think that's only fair.
mm.
Speaking of live ships, Vivacia's going through some shit. She's going through it pretty much. But the thing that there was a line in the very first page that really bothered me. She is like stressed out about Wintrow because he's hurt, and so she's just like going on and stuff. And she's like, we should have kept that slave surgeon from the cross patch. We should have forced him to come with us. And I'm like, thinking, I'm like, this, I just didn't like it. And then I thought, a little bit deeper on it, and I'm like, the reason I don't like this is because, first of all, Vivacia's calling him a slave, and I don't think that she should do that. Like, I don't feel like that, like, Wintrow wouldn't have approved of that. And then, second of all, like, thinking about forcing someone to stay aboard her just doesn't feel like Vivacia, because she knows how it feels to have someone be forced to stay on you and like to be forced to do stuff that you don't want to do. So she shouldn't want that for anyone else. And I understand that she's like super stressed about Wintrow because she can't even feel him and stuff. But still, like, she's starting to think like Kenneth.
Yep.
And I don't like it. Without Wintrow, her like moral compass is completely gone.
Which is kind of an issue because she's like, I'll do whatever it takes to bring Wintrow back, even if it's stuff that Wintrow wouldn't like.
Yeah.
Again, I do like that she actually takes a stand against Kenneth, though.
Me
Like-
too. I really liked that. Finally. It took long enough.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
It's weird because like nothing in particular spurs it or prompts it in like a meaningfully different way. She's just sort of. I almost feel as though like if Wintrow's there, she's stubborn and she's like, if he's telling it to me, I can't accept it. But now that she's had time to like think about it for herself without Wintrow constantly telling it to her, she's like, maybe he was onto something.
Well, and before, when she had Wintrow, she had that connection to fall back on and to feel like that full, fulfilled, we know each other so well relationship. And when she doesn't have that, she realizes how much is lacking in her relationship with Kenneth and like why it would never work out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also so interesting how much like kind of not mentions, but like little passing things are so reminiscent of Paragon in this section, because we have like Vivacia's talking about how she like doesn't think that they could really ever have that connection because Kenneth is so closed off. And the reason he's closed off is because he already has that connection to another live ship. And I don't think that you can have it with multiple live ships. Like, he is tied to Paragon the way that Wintrow is tied to Vivacia. And then she talks about having this like fear of the truth inside her and how she like fears her whole identity, and she's got this face that she wears to the world, but then there's like more to that, and there's other faces that are concealed underneath it. And she's like, I sense a past behind my past. If I do not guard against it, I fear it will leap out and change all that I am. And that is like very much stuff that we have heard Paragon say and think in the past too. And then a couple pages later, we have the charm telling Kenneth, like, how would he feel like if he had to live without his hides? Would he enjoy that? So there's so much of like Paragon in Vivacia right now.
I picked out that
like
line
freezing up
from
like how much does the
too.
charm know?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
This is a pretty heavy chapter, but one section that made me like giggle was they're talking about Wintrow and like Kenneth's like looking him over after he's injured, and I think, or maybe it might have been Edda, and they're like his fingers were as sausages, and I'm like, yes, another like every major injury has to have a sausage related metaphor. It's in Robin Hobb's contract.
Yes.
Also, that description of them, like, have you guys seen King Charles's hands?
No.
Like, okay, I'm gonna put a picture in the chat, but they literally, I'm like, I think they're so funny. But
I thought you were gonna go a completely different direction with this.
They
I thought you were
look-
going like
this is how I picture Wintrow's hands when they give that description. Like, oh, this is taking forever to load. I just want to copy the image.
Have you watched Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
I watched like half of it.
Oh,
Alright,
okay.
Put a picture in the chat.
Oh my
Okay.
god, why? They're
I
like
know.
all the
The
hands.
first time I saw that, I thought it was fake, and then I saw the full picture, and it's not fake.
God.
But I think they're so funny. Like,
That's
something's
how
wrong
Wintrow's
with
hands are
him.
right now.
Like, something has to be wrong with him. But that's like how that's how I pictured Wintrow's hands when she described them as sausages.
Look, it makes a lot of sense. That does check out. Those are sausage hands for sure.
Uh-huh. I think my only other note for this chapter was like Etta is thinking about how much she cares about Wintrow and whatever, and then thinking about Kennett. And it's the first time that it's really indicated that Etta can see through Kennett to an extent, or like suspects things about him. Because there's a part where she's like, it's from her perspective. It says, she had suspected Kennett of playing on the boy's gullibility, encouraging Wintrow in his beliefs simply so he could enlist him to his own endeavors. And it's like, yes, that's correct. That's exactly what he's doing.
And she's like okay with it, you know.
She's
like,
fine with it. Yeah.
Which, like, if you see how he's manipulating Wintrow, how
Why
do
don't
you not
see
think?
how- right.
Yeah,
Like she's on the right path, but she doesn't have it correct yet. I don't think it's until after she finds out what he does to Althea that she like really gets it, or at least like the chinks in the armor.
I also think that, like, again, the serpent incident really sets everything back.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I think it's really interesting how you would expect Kenneth to sort of revel in it, but even Kenneth is like uneasy that he can't explain what happened instead of just assuming that like it's a fate or destiny thing, and he's bothered by how everyone's acting differently towards him.
Yep.
Like, you would expect him to be like, yeah, cool, I've brought them under my control even more. That's my fate and destiny. But even there's even a part of Kenneth that realizes like some what
Something's
even I
weird
don't.
here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
Which is ironic because it's like the actual explanation is incredibly mundane, but
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's all because of Wintrow too. Like, it's everything big that Kenneth has done in this whole series, and I think in his like life pretty much has been either as a result of Wintrow doing something or because he had Wintrow by his side.
because
Because
Wintrow's the catalyst.
I know that's what I was saying. I'm like, everyone thinks that it's like Kenneth's luck and stuff, but it's really just that he has the catalyst with him and is like steering him along and showing him where to go and what to do.
Which
In a
is
sort of
interesting
weird
because he's
way,
doing a
Kenneth
better
like takes
job.
over as like what is Amber / the Fool's role? Like
Yeah,
it's just
I was
White
gonna,
Prophet, but like
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
and doing a better job at it than like Amber would have not been able to. I don't know that Amber would have been able to drive things in the right direction the way that Kenneth does, just because she doesn't have as much influence in their world as he does. And she can't be as ruthless because it's not in character.
I think also she would have a hard time with Winter. Like, I think they would argue so much more, and Winter would like be against most of the things that she says just because like it doesn't fit his philosophy or anything that he wants to do.
Yeah, it doesn't fit into his narrative. He'd be like, I just want to be a priest.
Mhm. And it was
Interesting.
Kenneth who he needed, and like everything is playing out the way it should be, but Amber's stressed that it's not.
Right.
I almost feel like Amber and Wintrow have like really similar worldviews. It's just like Wintrow is less mature. And but I do agree that like I think Kenneth being different kind of helped drive like he was sort of like an aspirational figure for Wintrow in some ways.
Yeah,
Like Kenneth gets shit done. Why can't I get shit done?
I think that Wintrow and Amber both want the world to be in a similar way. Like they both obviously recognize that slavery is wrong and like treating people with kindness and like those types of general, like in terms of morality, they're both pointing in the same direction. But Amber is willing to do things for the greater good at detriment to herself and what she wants, and Wintrow is not. Like Wintrow's
Wintrow's
not
like, I'm
willing.
squared.
Yeah, he's like, well, I just want to be a priest and I want to do what I want to do. Like, so that I think they would butt heads in that regard.
I think also Amber would have a hard time getting Wintrow to be active. Like they would just have these like debates and it would get Wintrow to be thinking all the time and he would be like critically analyzing everything that Amber's saying. But Kenneth does a really great job of getting Wintrow out of his head and making him be an active participant in life in general.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think my last note for this chapter is just sort of I've thought about this like sort of briefly in other chapters, but this one really made me think about I wish we got like more like not just in the broad sense, but like also in specifics. Because like
Yeah.
I think we get the backstory of lots of other characters, and I think it really lots of like the ways that she responds to like Kenneth and Wintrow and all of that. It sort of like feels like it's built on some foundation where we don't make sense. Like there's like it always like there's a little more there that we just don't get to see, and I wish we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, especially with her like disdain for religion and stuff. That's something that like it doesn't fully make sense with her just working in the brothel, I feel.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like she has like such a strong worldview and conviction that like it's like where did this come from?
She reminds me a little bit of Starling in that regard. Yeah, I like her a lot better than I like Starling. But they both have very strong, like, opinions on the way that things should go.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's interesting that like Starling is almost completely selfish, and Edda is like selfless to the point of it being detrimental to herself for a lot of the series.
Yep.
Like even in this chapter, she's like, I can't. I'm not going to let myself think about my feelings about Wintrow. What does this mean for Kenneth? And it's like, no, you should. It's fine for you to feel like worried about Wintrow for yourself. You don't have to feel it for Kenneth.
Right.
I just think that it's annoying how Kenneth like touches Wintrow's face and like tells him to start waking up or like that it's okay to die or all that stuff. And then like immediately after the skills healing starts, like it's just annoying that like the timing of Kenneth is perfect. I hate it.
And I love how no, he was like hedging his bets. He's like, Wintrow, come back to us. But also, if like dying is what you want, that's cool too. Like,
Yeah.
He's like,
Cover
you can
all
live,
the
like,
bases.
don't hold on for me, but like also could you live for me too?
and everyone is like, whoa, Kenneth even defies death. That's
I know.
crazy.
So annoying.
And the ending of that chapter, like where he's like, "You are mine, Wintrow." Wintrow drank to that. I'm like, no.
I know it was so gross. It was so yucky. That gave me yucky vibes.
I can't wait for Jared and Julia to realize how Kenneth is just
It's so fucking gross.
awful. Yeah.
Mhm. And I mean, we don't get that part of it in this chapter, but there's that whole section where Kenneth is like, sometimes it almost seems as if Wintrow was a younger, more innocent version of himself, unscarred by the hardships of life. When he thought of Wintrow that way, he felt an odd tenderness for him. He could protect him. He could be to Wintrow the kind of mentor that he himself had never had. Yet to do that, he had to be the boy's sole protector. And like, you don't get like the creepy parts of it, but you do get like the possessive, manipulative. I'm going to cut everyone else that Wintrow cares about out of his life, so I'm the only one he has.
Yeah, the soul protector is kind of yucky, especially because it's Vivacia. Like,
Mhm.
you can't be on this live ship and be the soul protector of Wintrow.
Mhm.
But that's why he's plotting to, like, get him off the ship in the first place.
He needs Wintrow close, but he wants him away. It's just like he wants to control both Vivacia and Wintrow independently, but he can't do that while they're next to each other. And they're all
Right.
stuck on the same ship, so there's no good solution to that. Until Bull shows up. And then at first it's an issue, but then he's like, wait, this is kinda great.
Now I don't have to make Etta and Wintrow woohoo anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, do we have any other notes for this chapter?
Nope.
Okay, then moving on to the last chapter of this section, Tantaglia's flight. Tantaglia's flying around. She's like, "Wow, it's good to get out, stretch my wings after 100 years in a dark cocoon under ruins." And then she's like, "You know, I really do owe this to those little human beings. Should I go help them? Yeah, I got nothing better to do." And so she goes and picks up Selden and Rain, rescues them. Rain is like, "We gotta go save Malta." And Tantaglia's like, "You're annoying, but let's go find Malta." And then Rain's like, "There she is, let's go rescue her." And Tantaglia's like, "You're annoying, and I'm not actually gonna do that, but I'll take you to Treehog, and you can go save her ass yourself."
I love when he's just like making demands of her and she's like, "You are so stupid. Like if I do that, it will literally kill all of them."
I know. I loved that.
Like I
Like
told
Rain
you.
is in his like Mission Impossible era where he's like, just drop me onto the boat, and she's like, "What
Yeah.
I can get
human?"
close enough to drop you through the boat, let alone put you on it.
And then he's like, "Well, bring me back to the ship and then guide them to where it is." And she's like, "Well, I could have done that in the first place, but you demanded that I take you to her right away." Like, she's just pointing
The
out.
only reasonable one at this point right now.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, he knows for the chapter. I was just like enjoying the point of view. Like Tintaglia is just such a fun point of view character. We were talking about this earlier, but like I think she's just like she's so like coy. Not maybe not coy, but she's so like I'm so cool and this is so great and I'm not caring about these humans because I care. I'm not like helping these humans because I care about them or anything. I'm just like doing it because like shut up.
It's cute.
One thing that did annoy me is there's Rain is trying to convince Tantaglia to save Malta and like why she should save Malta, and he says Malta did as much to free you as I did, or something to that effect. And I was thinking back on it, and I was like, Tantaglia tormented you for months, and you never did a single thing to free her. And Malta, like, literally snuck into the city and, like, was actively trying to free her and got everything, like, going to free her, and you just slightly finished the job. Like, Malta arguably did way more to free Tantaglia than Rain did, and he's like, well, she did just as much as me, so you should save her.
I think that physically, Malta 100% did much more than Rain. But I think that, like, he's thinking of it as, like, I vouched for you. I kept them from cutting into you all of these years. Like, he kept her cocoon safe. And so he thinks that's, like, part of keeping her, like, freeing her in general. And I think that he just thinking of the longer game.
I don't think he's like I
Yeah.
feel like the way he's thinking about it is like you rescued me because you perceived that I helped you to be freed. Malta also helped you to be freed. You should go rescue Malta. He's like trying to draw like an equivalency there. I don't think
Yeah.
Especially
I guess
because
that makes sense. I felt like he was trying to take credit for, like, what Malta did.
I think also it's because him and Selden were there when Tantaglia merged, so she might have assumed that they did more physical effort than Malta
Right.
when it came to rescuing her. So I think that maybe Rain isn't being like cocky about it.
Okay. I'll accept that.
It would be in line with Rain's character, though, I will say. He's
At
like,
this point, I feel like he
At
gets
this
better.
point, yeah. He does get better. Like, by Rain Wilds, he's much better.
Yeah,
Their relationship is more balanced.
yeah.
mhm. Nick, do we have anything else to say about this?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. I think that this was it was a slowish start to the book, but it really like set up where everyone is, like all the pieces on the board, and it did it in a way that like gave us interesting developments about both the places and the characters. So again, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, I got a lot more out of the section than I expected I was going to get when I first came into it. At first, I was just like, okay, here's the start of the first 75% of this book in which nothing ever happens, and that's just not that was just not what it ended up being.
Well, I mean, knowing us, we get the most out of the most bland sections. And when these huge monumental things happen, we're like, yeah, so this happened. Moving on. Do you remember
Yep.
that little rock that was in the corner that was mentioned? Like, let's analyze that for 15 minutes.
So what was up with the stone arrow and the dragon on that island?
Yeah.
I'm still wondering about that, though.
I feel like
I think
don't
we'll
they
get to
go
it.
to
I think Tantaglia and Rain go there.
Yeah, I think so. But we'll get to it,
Oh.
I think.
I really think it's one of those arrows that Swift uses on what's his name as the dragon.
Yeah. No, like 100% for sure.
God, what is that guy's name? I used to call my dog that. Oh,
Icefire?
Keeble Rawbread.
Raw bread.
Keeble raw bread.
Yeah,
Wrong dragon.
When Frodo's being naughty, I call him that sometimes.
Oh my god, that's cute.
I can't wait for us to get there and then be like, that's the guy, remember him? And Jared and Julia are gonna be like,
What?
who?
Yeah.
Yep, I remember in Tawny Man, like on my first read when they mentioned him, I was like, who the fuck is that? Like, I had no memory of it.
Yeah, same.
See, I remembered it, but only because I was like blazingly annoyed at the end of Farseer where I'm like, they didn't explain this or this or this. I have an itemized list of my grievances. And then Tawny Man came in and addressed most of it, so it was fine.
Yep.
But yeah, thanks everyone for watching / listening, and we'll see you next time for more Ship of Destiny. I don't know what's next because I don't remember this part of the book. Whoa.
Same.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Bye.